So I thought this might be useful for people who wanted to learn how to create a fire in the outdoors and leave it looking neat and tidy after they've had their fire. If you wanted to find out how to light a fire, there's hundreds of books, dozens and dozens of videos available on YouTube about how to light a fire. Anything from using a can of petrol to friction tools. So there's plenty of ways to light a fire. But there's not that many videos or books out there about how to light a fire, prepare the ground, and leave it looking neat and tidy, almost as if no one's there. There's such a great influx of people doing bushcraft and other wilderness experience kind of fire lighting films out there that I thought it'd be really important to try and put one together that gives you the skills on how to leave little impact. Because if you're anything like me, you come to the outdoors because it's beautiful, because it's pristine, and we can keep it like that with just a few handy skills. So here we go. This is a video not how to light a fire. This is a video on how to put a fire out and leave it neat and tidy. There's a wonderful organisation called Leave No Trace, which is started in America, which is wonderful. It talks about how to use things in the outdoors and leave as minimum impact as possible. And they've got a great 4D way of remembering where to get your wood from. That is, the D's for getting your wood are distant, dinky, dead, and down. So what I mean by that is, when you're going to set your fire, try not to gather all the wood in exactly the location your fire is going to be, because you're going to have a big impact on the environment in that one location. So try and get the wood at various distances from your fire. So walk around, get off your backside, walk around, find the wood. Dinky. Yeah, I tend to refer to it as stupid white man fires, where you have huge, great big fires that are consuming massive amounts of wood because you don't need it. If you're doing just a quick overnight stay in the outdoors, hello Poopy, if you're doing a quick overnight stay in the outdoors, you don't need to have big logs. You just need small stuff, probably no thicker than your forearm. That's as big as it wants to be. So, dinky, keep the wood small. Second is dead. Use dead wood. And the other thing is dead wood that's down. So try not to tear pieces of material off trees. So here's an example. My fireplace is going to be over there, 20-30 metres away, so I'm going to walk around the place. So the first thing I'm going to do is walk around the place and, well, I can't use this because it's live. It's got green leaves hanging off it. Okay? This is again live. This is dead. You can actually see that it's just crumbling. But I don't want to use that because it's yet to fall off. So I'm going to look for this. So this is about the kind of material we're looking for. We're looking for dead, distant, dinky, and down. So that's the kind of wood you need. So if you're using this stuff, this is going to have as minimal impact on where you're having your fire as possible. If you're taking an axe, if you're taking a saw into the outdoors, that's fine. You should not be chopping down live trees. You should just leave it alone, let nature grow. There's enough stuff in a wood that's fallen out of the trees for you to burn and have a sustainable fire quite easily. So just be a little bit more sensitive to where you get your wood. So if we're going to be lighting fires in the outdoors, and we're going to try and reduce the impact on what we're doing, a little bit of preparation is key. Now I'm sure there's lots of different methods of lighting fires in the outdoors and creating a less impact mentality. But here's just one method that really requires no more equipment than you'd normally take with you. So what do we need to actually light a fire in the outdoors? Well, we need fuel. We've already discussed where we're going to get our fuel from. We need something to prepare the ground with, so you can use a rusty old knife if you wish, maybe a blunt axe, even a sharpened stick, or you can get yourself something a bit more specialised like an entrenching or digging implement. You need an ignition source, whatever you wish, box of matches, embers, who cares, but just something you can light your fire with. And then finally you're going to need something to put the fire out with and to cool the ground down with, which is and water. So the first thing we really need to do is to prepare the ground. And to prepare the ground, we've got to think about how big our fire is going to be. Most fires I see in the outdoors are way too big. They just don't need to be these huge, great big bonfires. They're there for aesthetics and playing around on festivals. We don't need anything that big when we're moving through the environment in a sustainable way. So we really need to create smaller fires so we burn less fuel and have less impact. Quite simply, a fire about the size of your head is easily enough to heat the area to keep 4 people warm and fed quite easily. So we don't need to build anything bigger than your head unless you've got a group of people. And then you have to ask yourself, should I be in this place with a large group of people? So this is a fire that we would create for heating enough food for 4 people. So I'm looking to build a fire about the size of my head. So therefore I need to build an area of ground that is going to be unaffected by that fire. So you work on a ratio of about 3. So if I have a fire yay big, then I need space around that fire 3 times the distance to make sure it's not affected. So if my fire is this big, the space to the side that I'm going to clear should be 3 times it, in all directions. So what I'm going to do is just put my fire in here and clear the area. So here we go. Here's our budding marshmallow for the fire. And all I've done is just clear the leaf litter off the surface. Quite simply just dragging the leaf litter to one side. All I've done. Nothing more than that. And by doing that, what I've actually done is check that there are no surface roots bigger than my thumb. Technically speaking, you really want to keep away from roots bigger than your thumb, because if you burn those accidentally, you're going to damage the trees around you. If it's smaller than your thumb, it's not going to cause any real great effect. So try and keep things to a minimum impact and just check the surface roots. That's done by clearing the leaf litter out of the way and just stacking it to one side. Next job is to actually dig down through the biological layer at the top. So we better start digging. Thanks, that's great. Now get lost. Go on, get lost. Get lost. Nobody loves you. Go away. So we've cut our turf out and we've cut through our humus, which is the biological layer where all your little bugs and beasties grow. And a lot of the leaf litter is lying on top of that. It's made up of broken leaf litter. So we're cutting through that because that's where a lot of the biological activity grows. And if you light a fire on top of it, it'll kill it. So if we just cut it out and move it, we can replace it later. The other reason we cut it out is because it's made of leaf litter and bits of degrading wood. Well, it's fuel, it'll burn. So we could have a long-standing fire just by this humus actually embering. So we cut through that, and you can clearly see the demarcation between the biological layer here, and what we're getting down here is what's commonly referred to as the mineral layer. It might not actually be minerals, but it's ground that is denser and less biologically active. Therefore it's less delicate to kind of fire activity or being dug into. So we've cut away the sensitive stuff to replace it later, and we're now going to build our fire on top of this. And as you can see, it's kind of damp. What I've also done is I've stood on it and compacted it down so that it's dense. And it's damp so that when we light our fire, any kind of steam is not going to be injected into the ground, therefore killing other forms of mycelium and bacteria within it. It's just going to sit on top of the ground rather than have pressurized steam. It's just going to have localized fire on the surface. So we removed it, the biological layer, to preserve it. We're going to light our fire on top of something that is less delicate. So with our ground prepped, compact, wet, damp, not saturated, it's now time to light our fire. And if you want to go away and watch another video on how to light a fire, I'm sure there are hundreds out there. But this is one that's about how to prepare the ground and leave the ground in a more sustainable fashion. So now we're ready to light our fire. That's as big as you need to be. That'll cook for 3-4 people quite easily. The actual volume of the fire is big enough. You might want to put some slightly bigger sticks on, maybe up to about your wrist thick. But that's it, you don't need to go any bigger than that. You don't need to have a roaring fire, because all you're doing is just consuming wood. So So when you're preparing to put your fire out, you actually need to think about that maybe an hour, 2 hours before you really need to put it out. So if you're going to have breakfast, you might want to think about using the fire embers in the morning rather than building a fresh fire. So instead of putting new wood on and having a huge raging fire, what you can do with your excess wood, you should have a few bits left, I'm sure, just throw it back into the woodland around you. Just scatter it around. Because little twigs broken and tossed around the wood, no one's going to see it, no one's going to know. They don't know you've been there. But if you leave a pile, it looks like somebody's been there. Remember, we're just trying to make this place look natural. So meanwhile, we're going to let that fire burn down now. And we're going to just gather the ashes together, bringing the sticks closer and closer so the fire consumes itself. All the little twigs get eaten up, burnt up. What we're aiming to do, our plan, is to get the fire down to just white ash. But I appreciate that that's not always achievable. So we're going to do our best to get it down to white ash, and hopefully there'll just be a few bits of charcoal left. You shouldn't really ever have chunks of burnt wood. If you've got chunks of burnt wood, you're not planning properly. You need to think ahead. So remember, just keep your materials smaller. Think ahead, think an hour and a half ahead to reduce the quantity of your fire. Okay. So with some preparation and some pre-planning, we've brought our fire closer and closer together. We haven't added any more fuel. All we've simply done is just drag the ashes, drag the sticks closer and closer together. And they've smouldered. And as they've smouldered, we've blown onto them to make sure they burst into flame and burn down quicker. We've just teased things together. So if you're very careful and cautious, you can actually burn it down to white ash quite quickly and quite simply. And when we lit the fire about half an hour ago, it was quite large. With a bit of coaxing, we've burnt it down to that quite quickly. So you could do that whilst you're putting your own personal camping equipment away. Just let the fire burn down as you're prepping other things. So what we've got now is just a few smoking embers, some half-burnt twigs. I don't want to make a too perfect job of it, so you can see what to do with a half-out fire. You're going to need some water. You're going to need lots of it. So a water bottle isn't going to be enough. But thankfully, my river and my fire are only about 10 metres apart. For a bit further, you're going to need some big pans. So you're going to need plenty of water. It's not rocket science. Just put the fire out. So I'm going to need probably 3, maybe 4 of those to get this quantity of fire out. I'll go back and get some more water. Clearly, if you're going to be cooking on an open fire, which let's face it, if you're going to light a fire, use it for something, you should have some metal pans, probably steel. We've only brought a little baby one out today, but you can use your metal pans to actually help put the fire away by just taking the wood and soaking it in the metal pan. I think that's pretty much going to guarantee the water is out. And if you've got a bigger fire, you're going to need a bigger pan. You could soak the area and then scrape all the ashes up with a metal pan and then fill it full of water from a water bottle. So that you're absolutely guaranteeing that everything is out. So I could put that to one side and let that cool down. Now I'm going to take a stick with a sharpened end and perforate the ground. Once I've perforated the ground, absolutely soak it. I'm going to put on probably 4 or 5 litres of water onto there. Americans, I'd say maybe 2-3 gallons of water. Get the ground wet. It stops the ground leaching out its heat, and it stops the possibility of the fire rekindling when you're not there. It's got to be wet, it's got to be soaked, it's got to be cold. We've thrown on maybe 4 or 5 litres of water onto quite a small fire, and it's now saturated. You can see where the water is soaked deep into the ground. no heat coming off there. Put my hand on. That's absolutely cold. So the fire's out. It sounds a bit stupid saying that, but you've got to remember there's a lot of heat been taken down into the earth. Just by putting my finger into the ground, I can feel it's warm, but it's not hot. So you just got to make sure the fire's out. So that's it, the fire is now out. Now how do we put the fire away? How do we make sure we keep that looking like we've not even been here? So we've got our few soaked sticks. We really shouldn't leave this stuff lying around. It's unsightly. I remember working with the British Archaeological Survey once, and we stood by fire pits that were 8,000 years old. So yeah, don't think the world is going to take away your rubbish for you. Do yourself a favour, do the world a favour, just bury stuff a bit sympathetically. It is wood, it will degrade, but not if it's charcoal left on the surface. So just take a fire digging implement, cut a small hole, stick it in the ground, stand on it. Magic, it's gone. If you've got little tiny bits, you can break those up in your hand and you can throw those individually over a broad area because they won't matter too much because they're getting buried in undergrowth. What you don't want to do is pile it all in one location. Just try and pick it up a bit at a time and just scatter it, kind of like seeds. Spread it around so that you're minimising and spreading your impact over a broader area. What you've got to do with that water is just chuck it. Done. So at the beginning we compacted the ground down to stop heat transfer from steam, because the ground is denser, more compact. The steam won't transfer through the ground and kill off things and spread heat damage. So we're doing the opposite now. We're re-aerating it, perforating it with a very technical instrument called a pokey stick. So poke the ground with a stick, which will allow air in and it will allow water in, which means it will ensure that any water that goes in will get in deep and make sure everything's cool. And you're doing that over the whole fire pit. It takes a couple of minutes and then it's job done. Okay, reverse the process. And then we'll put the turf back on top. Moving around a bit. Nestle it in, and then quite simply, all you've got to do is pat it down, really. Just walk on it. So really now it's actually put away, it's neat and tidy. Any fire damage is actually underneath several layers of soil and in a layer that's not heated anymore. So really now down to camouflage. We're just going to put back on top all the leaf litter that we found. You can use anything. You can use a stick, you can use your digging tool, you can even use a broken branch off the tree just to scatter the leaf litter around the place. Spread it a bit further out than you normally would, sort of blend it all in so the edges are less conspicuous. So last finishing touches could be grabbing a few leaves out of the underneath of local trees. Doesn't take it from one tree, take it from multiple. Remember, we're taking from many locations rather than one location. Spread the kind of impact you have. Just cast them over the top, little light twigging. Done. Give that a few days, maybe a night of rain, allow the ground to spring back up, and it'd be very, very difficult to see that anybody's been here at any point. So that's a really quick, simple way of having a minimal impact. You can know that you've left this place almost as good as when you found it. Come on boy, let's go. Bye.